Now, there are certain habits that a lot of us are guilty of that can ruin the battery of our smartphones. Among them are letting the mobile battery run out completely, keeping it plugged in at 100%, using a more powerful charger than you need. I'm guilty of a little bit of that. But it's off honest. Nobody likes a dead phone battery, nor do they like a dead retirement plan. So let's talk about retirement here. That's what the show's for. What are some bad retirement habits you've seen people do to cause them to go through maybe their savings a little faster than they expected?
Yeah. We talked about one last segment. Definitely one of the bigger ones that I see people doing is making some knee-jerk decisions, as we say, based on emotion or based on the short-term movements of the stock market. And so I think the biggest concern there is that if we don't have not having a plan in place and not having each one of your dollars, knowing exactly where they're going, what strategy and what part of your retirement that they're dedicated to, and not going through the exercise of planning for retirement. I think that's definitely a bad habit. Another bad habit, Nolan, I would say not saving enough and maybe just kind of taking more of a passive role in the saving aspect of retirement and just thinking that I'm putting something away, so hopefully that should be enough, and then we'll worry about it later on as we get closer to retirement. And then obviously a big one here is spending too much. And I've seen this happen a lot in retirement in the go-go phases of retirement. We call it front-end loading retirement, where they do a lot of spending up front, don't really take a look at what the market is doing, and just kind of overspend early in retirement. And if that happens when the market's going down, then you're in for a little bit more of a challenge long term of having those dollars last, because you're having to sell more of your shares, and it's kind of this snowball effect that you will. And a lot of these habits, I think, aren't big issues, but they're little issues that compound into a bigger sort of scenario down the line, where you just don't notice it, but I'm going out more often. We're buying the $6 coffees more often and things like that, and you really do need to have an idea of what you're spending, what's coming in, and I think those are some of the biggest habits in retirement that I've seen.
Yeah, when I think about bad retirement habits, the things that I've seen over the years is, number one is not really taking into consideration healthcare and long-term care protection. So I think about people who retire before the age 65 and say, we're healthy. We're just going to, hold off on getting health insurance until we get to 65, because they look at what some of the costs are. They don't know what solutions are available. I know an individual who fell and she broke her leg, and then ultimately ended up having to have some surgeries. And it was a couple $100,000 is what the bill is. Mm-hmm. And, now the hospital wants them to pay that bill because they didn't have health insurance. They were just going to risk it until getting to age 65. You think about people who say, well, I'm not going to go into a nursing home. And, I appreciate everybody who came out last week. We had our Wealth, Wine, and Wisdom event over at Urban Pine, and we were talking about long-term care solutions, and we were talking about, how to protect your assets without buying traditional long-term care. There's ways to leverage your assets to protect them. So healthcare, long-term care are really big. Number two is life expectancy and not knowing how life will play out. I recently got together with a couple, and we were taking a look at their situation. And, when we ran the numbers, if they lived a long time, everything works out great if they simply just sail off into the sunset together at the end of their retirement years. But we know that that's not always how things play out. Heaven forbid, if there's a premature death, the spouse would have had a loss of the income. Half of the Social Security essentially would be gone. And that would be, in this case, a devastating loss. And so we were able to show them, you could shore that up with some insurance, and for a plan, you could put 10 years worth of replacement income in place to be able to help that. We've been talking about, how not running the stress test of inflation and how that impacts your portfolio can be a big one. So, the cost that you have today, inflation's become a bigger deal, but inflation needs to be part of your long-term plans as well. And as Chaz pointed out, there are some other things to watch out for, like those spending habits. Be careful when you look at the amount of money that you have, and it can go pretty quickly. So there's definitely some bad habits to avoid, and hopefully those are a couple of pointers to keep you moving in the right direction.
So if you want to break those habits, take that smartphone, which may or may not be overcharged, and go to arhq.com, schedule a time to speak with the team at America's Retirement Headquarters. find out more about them on the About Us tab, or give a call and set up a time as well. 419-794-3030. Once again, 419-794-3030.